Turbo petrol engines, direct injection. These are two new terms that have been added to the most often Googled keywords for any Indian car buyer these days. In fact, under Rs 20 lakh, there are now 7 different models offering these technologies. Today, new one has joined the ranks in the form of the Nissan Kicks 1.3 Turbo Petrol, and we will drive it to tell you what it's all about. Before we get behind the wheel and tell you what it's like to drive, here are the headlines and top story for this engine. 156 bhp at 5500 rpm, 254 Nm of torque at just 1600 rpm, a 6-speed manual or a CVT. This engine has been co-developed by the Renault-Nissan Alliance in collaboration with Daimler and has features like an electrically controlled wastegate, variable cams, high-pressure direct injection, and even Nissan's mirror bore coating that's been developed and used in the GTR sports car for reducing friction. What's it like to drive? Well, the Kicks gets off the line quite easily, but with a lot less drama as compared to the Duster. The gear shifts are notchy and the clutch action is heavy, but once you get past the 2000 RPM mark, there's a surge of torque that you can ride all the way to 3-digit speeds if you need to get going somewhere quickly. Since this engine is all about the numbers, we tested it and discovered that it does the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in 10.24 seconds, which is a half a second off the Duster, but still quite a respectable time nonetheless. Equally impressive is the 20 to 80 km/h run in third gear that was completed in 9.41 seconds, while the 40 to 100 km/h run in fourth gear was completed in 12.51 seconds. Acceleration and roll-on figures tell one part of the story. What happens in city conditions where progress invariably tends to be slow? Well, the Kicks 1.3-litre turbo petrol engine responds well in those conditions too. There's a strong mid-range with large amounts of torque available in third gear, needing you to not shift at all if you're moving constantly. Nissan claims an ARAI efficiency of 15.8 kmpl, and with a little practice, it won't take much effort to keep the speed constant and rev low to hover around that figure or possibly even cross it. The Nissan Kicks gets the same suspension setup as the Duster, which means that it rides beautifully. There's an underlying firmness to the ride quality, but it's able to take most bumps and imperfections with aplomb. This, combined with the 210 mm ground clearance, means the Kicks will keep going even when the road becomes the path less taken. The steering has certain amount of reassuring heft that's just the correct amount to keep it easy to use at low speeds, but also that it weighs up nicely when you go faster to let you enjoy a spirited driving experience. The high center of gravity means you do get body roll through the corners, but it's predictable, and gliding from point to point will reward you with a good driving experience. One thing to note though, it takes a little more than 3 turns to go from lock to lock, which is not an issue at speed but feels cumbersome to use if you need to make a U-turn or park in a tight space. This Nissan Kicks 1.3 Turbo Petrol looks no different from its naturally aspirated sibling. There are no special badges of any kind outside, and in fact, you'd be hard pressed to tell that this is a Turbo Petrol model unless you actually got in and drove the car. Overall, the Nissan Kicks embodies Nissan's latest SUV design language in the form of the crossover stance, chunky element, large swaths of chrome, and bright colors. Up front, the Kicks sports Nissan's latest V-Motion grille, and because this is a top-spec model, you get full LED headlamps and some rather nice-looking LED DRLs that have been integrated into the assembly quite well. In profile, you can see the crossover stance of the Kicks thanks to the shape of the roofline as well as the flared wheel arches housing the top-spec diamond-cut 17-inch wheels and 215/60 section tires. The rear is dramatic thanks to the large wraparound tail lamps, layered elements, and the blacked-out C-pillar, which gives the effect of a floating roof. If attention is what you want, then the Kicks is not short on that and stands out sufficiently among the crop of D-segment SUVs that it competes with. Nissan has played it safe in terms of interiors for the Kicks. There's a chocolate brown over black theme, and it's a mixed bag in terms of quality with leather inserts on the dashboard and carbon fiber inserts like in the center console and the door, but Consequently, there are also hard-wearing plastics on the dashboard itself, the steering, as well as the center console. The seats have this nice quilted pattern, giving the impression of a squashy armchair-like design one would find in a library or a lounge. Space in front is more than adequate, with sufficient headroom and knee room even for a large person like me. The rear seats, like the front ones, get this chocolate and black theme and the quilted pattern. Features here include the rear AC vents, a 12-volt socket, a center armrest with 2 cup holders, and funnily enough, just one rear seat back pocket on the left side. Headroom and shoulder room here is more than enough for 2 people. However, a third person sitting here will have a tough time due to the way the air vents are positioned as well as a transmission tunnel. The boot at 400 litres is acceptable by segment standards, but can be expanded for additional space by folding down the rear seat back. This top spec XV pre-trim that we have reviewed gets button start with start-stop function, climate control with rear vents, height adjustment for the driver's seat, full digital instrument cluster, bottle holders in all the door pockets, and cruise control. One of the main attractions of the cabin is touchscreen infotainment system with a dedicated mobile app, as well as Android Auto and Apple CarPlay compatibility. We have reviewed this system in detail in a separate story, the link to which you can find in the description below. All versions of the Kicks get ABS with EBD and dual front airbags as standard, while this top spec version gets 4 airbags as part of the deal. So there you have it, the Nissan Kicks 1.3 Turbo Petrol. It's good fun to drive, rides beautifully, and a good performer both out on the highway and in city conditions. However, quality, fit, finish and ergonomics are a bit rough around the edges, but nothing that will be a deal breaker. While looks are subjective, the Nissan Kicks will grab attention due to its design language. The Nissan Kicks range is priced from Rs 9.5 lakh to Rs 14.1 lakh ex-showroom Delhi. The car that we have driven, XV pre-empty manual dual tone, is priced at Rs 13.9 lakh, also ex-showroom Delhi. You can find all the details on the Nissan Kicks on our website carwale.com.